Hello, it's me, alexthehunted, and over a month ago I asked my community to answer this question of what were their favourite Godzilla kaijus, not including Godzilla. He's going to get his own list. The survey included 38 kaijus from the Godzilla universe, and they all voted on their top 10 favourites. And it worked very much like how the top 10 favourite movies, the survey for all the Godzilla movies, went down, where when you voted on your top 10 favourite, and 10th got 1 point, 9th got 2 points, 8th got, so on and so on until first place got 1 point. And we've done the same with the kaijus, and there have been quite a few interesting results from this one, definitely. This has been a very successful survey. Around about 500 of you answered the survey, and let's do this celebration of all the kaiju in the Godzilla universe, not including the Big G himself, with this ultimate Godzilla Kaiju Countdown, starting with, well, the very bottom, the one that got the least points. Oh well, let's begin, shall we? And in 38th place is the Severum, crawling in at last place and only scoring 26 points, which is less than half of the next kaiju. The Severum, well, it's a real shame, because they're actually a very interesting idea of these mini kaijus that have evolved from Godzilla. Because Godzilla has basically taken over the world, and all the environment works around Godzilla, that these creatures evolved from Godzilla as like these sort of, well, dragon sort of kaiju sort of things that look like straight out of Lord of the Rings, really, like those dragon things. They're a very interesting design. They're actually technically one of the most recent new additions to the Godzilla universe when it comes to brand new kaiju. It's just a shame, like all things involving the anime, they barely did anything. Well, that being said, they did have a bit of a role in the first and second chapter, mostly just to be sort of things to eat characters and just be a general nuisance, and then they just dropped off the face of the earth in the third movie. But as a design wise, they're quite interesting. I mean, they're not bad by any sense of the words. They're a bit generic, but they're definitely interesting designs. But unfortunately, just to how terrible the animes are, they're very poorly utilised, which is a shame, because there definitely is potential for these to come back in some form and actually have a bit of an impact. You know, like how in the Gamera universe, the Gaios became like this sort of swarming evil race of just bats that just swarm planets and take over everything and eat everything. I can definitely see the Severum being put in that sort of role. But anyway, yeah, we have our 38th place, the worst listed kaiju, the worst voted kaiju, according to you guys. And in 37th place is Gabra. Oh, poor Gabra. He can't even get last properly. It's amazing to think after all these years of Godzilla's Revenge being out and being so hated by the fandom that Gabra is also this hated. Like, you would have expected him to have some sort of fan base following, but throughout the fandom Gabra is just seen as a massive joke. But that's not to say he hasn't got some redeeming qualities. I mean, he is a very interesting kaiju in the fact that he's not this massively powerful kaiju that's out to destroy the world, he's more just the bully. He is not too powerful and he knows it, so he's going after the little son of Godzilla and not going after Godzilla himself because he knows he'll get his ass kicked. And his electrical powers are very interesting in the fact that he has to grab someone to shock them. He has no real direct beam himself, but his design is really goofy, and the fact that he has no tail really does make him look like just a guy in a rubber suit. I mean, how the hell could they possibly make this design look good? Oh, that's right, Godzilla's Singular Point has Gabra in it and he looks amazing. Maybe if I do this survey again after Singular Point comes out, maybe Gabra won't become second last. He might go up a few ranks, but we'll see. But for now, Gabra is second last. And in 36th place is... the giant octopus. If there was ever a kaiju that just had a habit of showing up, it would be the giant octopus. This kaiju has appeared in so many kaiju movies just out of nowhere. It was in King Kong vs. Godzilla, it was in War of the Gargantuans, it was in the alternative ending to Frankenstein Conquers the World, and you could make a case that it was a giant octopus slash squid that just showed up in Kong Skull Island. This guy just has a habit of appearing. As kaijus goes, there's not really much to say about him. He is just the giant octopus. Although technically he is one of the few kaijus that has a confirmed kill, because in the alternative ending of Frankenstein Conquers the World, it is the giant octopus that drags Frankenstein into the water, and it is claimed that the giant octopus has killed him. Which is interesting to think that this is the kaiju that kills Frankenstein, so does that mean the giant octopus is more powerful than Baragon? It's a very interesting kaiju in terms of just how he just has a habit of being there. In King Kong vs. Godzilla it was an actual octopus that actually did fight a man in a suit. There was no puppets used at all, it was just a legitimate octopus that was sadly eaten by the director when the filming was done. But from every other appearance, from War of the Gargantuans onwards, it was a puppet, or if you want to go with Skull Island, it was CGI. It's interesting to think how a kaiju that has so many on-screen appearances has just such a little following, and it's just another kaiju that's just there. The giant octopus. It doesn't even really have a name, it's just the giant octopus. And it takes 36th place on this list. And in 35th place is... the giant condor. Honestly, when I say this, it's amazing how it did this well. 4th last is way better than I thought it was going to do. But yes, the giant condor, the screen shaking, just insane, one of the worst fights in the Godzilla franchise. Just this giant condor who just appears for about 3 or 4 minutes just to have a peck at Godzilla in a shaky cam fight that's very hard to watch, and yeah, you don't really get much of a look at this kaiju either. It's just a giant condor that decides it wants to attack Godzilla and also eat the woman. But yeah, it's there. There's no origin for it or anything like that. It's just there. There's not really much to say about it because apart from Godzilla vs. Ebirah and of course the stock footage used in Godzilla vs. Revenge, it has no other real appearances. Yeah, the giant condor, it's there. But yeah, the giant condor, well, it's surely something, yeah, I mean, when you get to see it, when you're not throwing up watching it fight. And in 34th place is... Mulgira. This was the first surprise for me on this list because I honestly expected Mulgira to do way better than this. To be 5th last is very surprising to me. It's the first mecha of the list, and while I also put this on my top 10 least favourite kaijus, I don't dislike this kaiju at all. I really actually love the design for this Mulgira. It's much better than the Mulgira design in the Mysterians. This Mulgira looks like an actual mobile tank. It looks like something that the military might actually use. Built from the wreckage of Mechagodzilla 2, it does have that problem where it was supposed to be Mechagodzilla 2 that appeared in Godzilla vs Space Godzilla, but they deemed that would be too unfair for Space Godzilla, so downgraded him to Mulgira, even though the movie states that he's supposed to be the upgrade. He's a brilliant design. He's one of the most interesting characters to play as in the Pipework Godzilla games. I do love the array of weapons he just has. He's not a mecha that's built for close range and long range. He's mostly just a support vehicle. That's how I sort of see him as. Definitely a mecha I hope comes back in Singular Point in some sort of form. He's just a really cool design that I would like to see used again in future movies, or just in the Singular Point hopefully. And in 33rd place is... Kumonga, Spygra, or just the giant spider. Kumonga is definitely a kaiju I think needs a bit more love. He's appeared in 3 Godzilla movies, if you also count Godzilla's Revenge, that is 4 Godzilla movies, and he's one of those kaijus that started off as Godzilla's antagonist but has also joined forces with him in later movies. I definitely dig the design because it's more than just a spider. He actually does have a bit of a character and a personality towards him. In Son of Godzilla he is cruel and sadistic, but also likes to hide and play tricks, acting sort of like an ambush predator. In Son of Godzilla he definitely has a presence and a threat to him. He is hyped up quite well, and then his final appearance, while he doesn't have too many scenes, he definitely leaves an impact. He is one of the few kaijus that actually scared me as a child, and then his appearance in Destroy All Monsters made me like him. And then we had Godzilla Final Wars, where it was basically a cameo role. It's a shame he's one of the few kaijus to never appear in a Godzilla game. I'm sure he's had like a cameo role as an enemy in like a GBA game, but as far as I can tell, he's never been a playable character in any game. Which is a shame. He's definitely one of those kaijus I think could do with a bit more love. And in 32nd place is... Kamacuras. Kamacuras is one of those kaijus that has never really been a threat to Godzilla, but it's always fun to see him show up. In Son of Godzilla, the swarm of Kamacuras were basically just cannon fodder to Godzilla. They were no threat to him whatsoever, he just beat the floor with him. But they did play their role very well as being sort of bully characters for Manila. And also had a very gruesome death against Kumonga. But my favourite version of Kamacuras was definitely in Godzilla Final Wars. I just love the changes they made to him, making him this ultra fast kaiju that can also blend into his surroundings, making him sort of like a stealth kaiju. He's not one of the big bruisers, he's more of the stealth kaijus, which really you don't see many of. And I also just love the noise that his wings make when he flies. It sounds like an old fighter plane. And also while he quickly gets his ass kicked, the move that Godzilla does on him with that charge, that just fast motion spin around attack, is one of my favourite Godzilla moments, just personally. I just find it so badass, even though it is Kamacuras losing. But yeah, never much of a threat, but always nice to see. Kamacuras is 32nd on this list. And in 31st place is... Ebirah, the horror from the deep. Poor Ebirah, you never really stood much of a chance against Godzilla. You were supposed to be a King Kong kaiju, and well, he doesn't have much personality outside of just being a giant lobster slash shrimp. He has no special attacks, nothing like that. And considering that it came after 2 King Ghidorah movies, he definitely comes off as a bit of a downgrade, but I definitely do like Ebirah. He always does come off as a bit of an underdog kaiju. In Ebirah Horror of the Deep and in Final Wars, he is sort of the underdog. I mean, Ebirah is one of the few kaijus to be taken down by humans on foot. Well, mutants, but you know what I mean. But for being basically a giant lobster, he is a fun kaiju to see around. He's never really a kaiju strong enough, I think, to be a main threat for a movie ever again. He's always going to probably be a supporting kaiju. But I'd definitely like to see Ebirah show up a bit more. Maybe even finally give him a beam attack. Maybe he can shoot really high pressured water or something like that. But yeah, you can't really get much from a giant lobster. He is just Ebirah, the horror from the deep. And in 30th place is... Manda. Manda's one of my personal guilty pleasure kaijus. He was one of the first kaijus I ever saw because Destroy All Monsters was one of the first Godzilla movies I ever saw, and he had a pretty big scene when it comes to the big city destruction scene, and I just really liked the design, even though the one that was in Destroy All Monsters isn't technically his best design. I mean, he is more of a serpent than a sort of a Chinese dragon than goes in his previous and later designs. But he is a very unique kaiju in the Godzilla universe, because he's one of the few puppet kaijus that can't fly. And I definitely think with CGI, and especially Singular Point, there's a lot more they can do with Manda and not restrict him to what they can do with a puppet. That's always been Manda's Achilles heel, is they can't really do much with him because he was a puppet. He didn't really have the weight to destroy things, so he was kind of on the sidelines. But like I said, with CGI and Singular Point, there's definitely more they can do with him. I definitely see him having a more prominent role later on and being more threatening and more intimidating. It would be interesting to see him fight Godzilla, or actually it would be a very interesting opponent for King Kong, I think. I would definitely like to see Manda fight King Kong. And that's Manda. He is the last kaiju in the 30s as we move into the 20s. Starting off with... in 29th place is... Minilla. Oh, I bet you were wondering when he was coming. Well, very popular in Japan. When it came to the survey, Minilla was not very popular at all. Seen as many as the Scrappy-Doo of Godzilla, Minilla has his good points. Minilla definitely has his qualities. I mean, he's definitely child-friendly, and he's not as annoying as he's made out to be. He's just a fun kaiju for the little kids to enjoy. He's a comic relief. While he shouldn't be a focus of any upcoming Godzilla movies, he would just be a fun side character. He was probably utilised best in Final Wars in that he was in the first half of it and they just disappeared until the end. When things started getting more serious, you just didn't see Minilla just show up while there was the big climactic battle between Godzilla and Kaiser Ghidorah. He's just a fun side dish. You just check up on him every now and then and you get back to the real action. Well, definitely one of the most divisive kaijus in the Godzilla franchise. Some people either love him or hate him. He's definitely the Scrappy-Doo of the Godzilla franchise. But he has his fans. That's why he's not bottom on this list. He actually has people who really do like him, and aren't just people trolling. But there we have Minilla. We definitely get a better Son of Godzilla later on. And in 28th place is... the male Muto, the smaller winged variant of the Muto, and for quite a lot of people might be the first villain kaiju that a lot of people saw. The Muto is a decent design. The male Muto is a decent design. He is a little bit generic, but when it comes to the first villain kaiju of the Monsterverse, it's good that they went for a new kaiju instead of something from the classic series. It's a good way to test the water, to just see if Godzilla can stand out on his own, and while Godzilla in the Godzilla 2014 movie is very much in the sidelines, the male Muto is really the main kaiju of the story in a way. He's the kaiju that gets the most screen time and has the most focus. And I also like how within nature, like most insect-like creatures, the male is the smaller version. But it also meant that we got a bit of variety in the climactic fight instead of Godzilla fighting two identical shaped kaiju. And that's the male Muto. Luckily the female Muto didn't eat him. Number 27. Muto female. How fitting that the Muto female and the Muto male are together in the list. Like they're meant to be together always and forever. Well, actually I prefer the Muto male, but Muto female is also a pretty good design. I liked how when this first trailer started to come out for it, everyone thought it was Gigan. Yeah, that's a bit of a big difference. Muto female, well, she doesn't have as much screen time as the Muto male because she appears around about 2/3 away in the movie. She definitely has a bit of a character, like she's clearly a mother wanting to lay her nest. I don't really know how to best put that. And when all her babies get blown up, even though she is technically the bad guy and if they do hatch they will kill us all, you do actually feel sorry for her. As it is clear on this list, both of these two have to be together. And this wasn't planned or anything, this just happened. It ended up scoring around about the same amount of points as each other, so they just ended up being together. How fitting and sort of romantic in a way. Romantic for a giant kaiju that's going to kill us all with radiation, babies and stuff like that. But yes, the Muto female and the Muto male are going to be together forever for always. I ship that. Number 26. Megaguirus. Another female queen kaiju. Megaguirus is technically a queen of a Meganulon swarm. She is the big queen, the big final version of a Meganulon. Yeah, basically she spends the entire movie in underwater and then she hatches to fight Godzilla in the final 5 minutes. Well, I am over exaggerating a bit, it's more like the final 10 minutes. She is in one of the best Godzilla fights of all time just because of how fun it is. It's just to say that the rest of the movie that she's in is not very good. She's also an interesting character to play as in the Pipeworks trilogy games, as she's one of the fastest characters in the game, but she's also very difficult to control because she is so fast, and a lot of her moves they're not really damaging. She is a very awesome design, I think. Like, you can definitely see this as like being a queen version of a swarm of insects. Like, in the middle of a hive there would be this. And it brings up the interesting theory that the Meganulon were in the original Rodan movie, so does that mean that there's a Megaguirus cocoon somewhere lying around in the Showa universe? Megaguirus is definitely one of those kaijus I think should come back in some form or another. I think she would definitely be a more fitting villain for the likes of Mothra than she would be for Godzilla. That's definitely a fight I would like to see in a movie, is Mothra versus Megaguirus. I would like to see how that would play out, since they're both flying kaijus but both very different kinds of flying kaiju. Whereas Mothra relies on energy attacks and beams, Megaguirus is more fast and up close and sort of like a mosquito in a way, where it will dart in and dart out very, very quickly. But yes, Megaguirus, the queen of the Meganulons, and only 26, so we're starting to get into the good stuff now. Number 25. Titanosaurus, the final kaiju of the Showa era. After what preceded Titanosaurus with the likes of Megalon, Gigan and Mechagodzilla, Titanosaurus is definitely a back-to-basics sort of kaiju. He doesn't really have any special abilities, he's just more a red, aquatic-looking version of Godzilla. He's also a very sympathetic kaiju because he's not meant to be an evil kaiju, he's supposed to be docile and sort of friendly in a way. He doesn't want to interact with humanity, he just wants to be left alone. But then evil scientists came and put something in his brain and mind controlled him and made him into an evil kaiju monster killer. Even though technically it is said that Titanosaurus is not a kaiju, he is just a dinosaur. He doesn't necessarily have any special abilities. He can lift up Godzilla by his mouth, which is, well, it's an interesting visual, and he has his wind gust attack, which plenty of kaijus have. So he doesn't really stand out, and I think that's what makes him kind of popular in a way, is that he is not really that special of a kaiju. He's just an average kaiju that just wants to be left alone. He's sympathetic and you feel sorry for him. And maybe that's why he's number 25. Number 24. Gorosaurus. Gorosaurus is another one of those kaijus that doesn't really stand out by himself. He is basically an overgrown giant T-Rex with a very nasty kangaroo kick. But it's interesting how he was born as a sort of tribute to the original King Kong movie, since his first appearance was in King Kong Escapes, where he was in the first half of the movie and just basically got killed by King Kong. And then that was really supposed to be it for him, but it was thanks to Destroy All Monsters that Gorosaurus got a bit of a more fan favourite following. He was definitely one of my first favourite kaiju, since Destroy All Monsters was one of the first kaiju movies I ever saw. Him replacing Baragon definitely made it so that he had more of a limelight. If his only appearance was in King Kong Escapes, I definitely don't think he would be as popular as he is. While Godzilla is king of the monsters, you could argue that Gorosaurus is king of the dinosaurs. And you could argue he is the one that delivered the crippling blow to King Ghidorah in the Shoal Monsters that started King Ghidorah's defeat. That kangaroo kick is very, very useful. With all the obscure kaijus they're bringing back in Singular Point, it would be nice to see Gorosaurus appear in some capacity and also in this movie. Maybe as just another giant dinosaur. Who knows, we'll see. But yes, Gorosaurus, number 24 on the list, and on to the next number. Number 23. Hedorah. The smog monster coming in at number 23. Hedorah is definitely a love or hate kaiju, I find. There are some people in the kaiju community who absolutely adore Hedorah and think he's one of the most powerful and underrated kaijus in the entire franchise. And then there are others who think Hedorah is one of the most unusual, weakest and just bad kaijus in the franchise. And you can see how he comes basically in the middle of the entire list. It shows his love or hate affiliation with the entire fandom. Godzilla vs. Hedorah is definitely the most weirdest Godzilla movie ever made. It is an experience in its own right, and Hedorah definitely adds to that just weirdness. Because they're going for a very kid-friendly Save the Earth message in this movie, but Hedorah himself is quite scary. He's one of the few kaijus with an on-screen kill count, and it's a very gruesome kind of killing because he just makes people's bodies dissolve into nothing but skeletons. Like, that's just brutal. He's a very unique kaiju. He's basically a giant pile of slime and pollution. I mean, he's basically the kaiju version of the giant blob. He's definitely one of those kaijus that fans have been wanting to see back in some form. While his last appearance was in Final Wars, it was the shortest cameo of them all, really. He is definitely an interesting kaiju. I would like to see him also come back. Maybe that will make people who don't like him see why he's so loved by other members of the fandom. We'll see. Number 22. King Caesar, a guardian monster of Japan. Okay, he didn't really do that much of a good job of it, but anyway, King Caesar is a guardian monster who was introduced in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and appeared again in Godzilla Final Wars. He's a fun kaiju. Well, he doesn't have that many great abilities. Well, he does have Reflect, which makes him a psychic type Pokemon. King Caesar is one of those kaijus that seems to have gotten more love outside of the movies than he did in the movies, because in the movies he's, well, in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, he spent the entire movie being built up and then he kind of gets his ass kicked immediately. It's a bit of a joke. And in Godzilla Final Wars, they gave him tits. I'm just joking, they're supposed to be make him look like one of those Chinese dragons, but it does look like he has boobs. But then when it comes to the other medias, like in the games, Godzilla Unleashed, he's actually one of the best kaijus to play as, but his best appearance in my opinion would be in Godzilla Rulers of Earth, where he beat Megalon and Batra and was also the deciding factor in the defeat of the Trilopods, being one of the few kaijus left that released all the other kaijus that were trapped by them and led the charge to help Godzilla save the day. Yeah, if you just look at King Caesar from his movie appearances, he's not that great, but in the comics and the other medias, he is actually one of the best ones there is. Definitely one of the kaijus that in recent years has been growing a lot in popularity. Let's hope this continues. Number 21. Varan. This was one of the biggest surprises for me on this list because, well, Varan doesn't really done much. From his movie appearances, he has one solo movie which was supposed to be a TV movie, and then the whole behind the scenes mess could be a video and it's alright, and it was just quickly rushed into being a full cinematic release and it really suffered from it. And then he has one small cameo in Destroy All Monsters and that's it. He's been one of those kaiju that's supposed to be in many Godzilla movies but never made it. I mean, he was going to be the final kaiju in the Heisei era and be the kaiju that was too powerful for Godzilla. He was meant to have many other movie roles that just never came about. But then, like King Caesar, I think it's the expanded media is where Varan's popularity lies. He's in Godzilla Unleashed, where he's an interesting character to play with, to say the least. But he also appeared in Godzilla Monster of Monsters, he was in the trading card game, the movie studio tour. He's been in plenty of games, and he's been in plenty of books. He also had a bit of a starring role in the comics as well. It's just interesting how Varan has been one of those kaijus that, well, he's not really one that you would think would be very popular since he has one movie and one cameo appearance in the movies, but outside the movies he's had plenty of appearances and I think that's probably where his popularity grew from. He's definitely a kaiju that is more interesting behind the scenes and outside of the main movie universe than he is inside. He's definitely the biggest surprise on this list. I honestly expected him to be in the 30s, but no, he's in the 20s, the high 20s. It is a shock. Number 20. Batra, the evil twin sister of Mothra. Ha, got you again. I know Batra is male. I just like to tease you. Batra is a very interesting idea I think should be explored more in movies. Sort of the evil to Mothra's good, how Mothra is supposed to be the defender of all life. Batra is sort of he's supposed to be the defender of Earth, but likes to go too far and, well, sees humanity as the problem and wants to do the whole extermination sort of thing. Batra's design is also just cool. I actually prefer the lava version design than I do the adult version, but that doesn't mean they're both not really cool designs. You definitely get the feeling that this is an evil Mothra. It's amazing how in the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy, Batra never made an appearance. He's not even mentioned. I definitely do think that if Mothra's gonna have her own movies again, Batra should play some role. Maybe be the main antagonist again. That was very much a missed opportunity in Godzilla vs Mothra because the Batra vs Mothra stuff was very short and just done very quickly. We should see what a full-scale god war between these two should look like. Batra is again a one with tons of potential I wish would appear more. That's sort of the thing with these middle ground kaijus is they're all really cool ideas that just haven't had their full potential realised yet. And Batra is no exception. Awesome design, very interesting origins and awesome idea behind it that needs more done with it. Maybe we'll see Batra appearing more time in this universe of Godzilla whenever the hell that's supposed to happen. Number 19. Megalon, the god of the Cetopian people. He's really a juvenile kid with a lot of powers. I really do love Megalon. He's just such a brilliant idea. You have this kaiju who is basically seen as a god among people, and then when things don't go his well or he gets confused, he sort of goes on this tantrum, and it's definitely a kaiju that was made in the era of Ultraman and making things more kid friendly. He definitely looks like he would fit right in there with Ultraman. But I just love how they use him. I love how he's become this sort of like... He's very popular, he's appeared in tons of games. which makes him a very popular character, but you see him in his one movie and he's kind of a pathetic joke. The Cetopians' plan of taking over the whole world, the moment something goes wrong they immediately call for backup because they have that little confidence in Megalon being able to do the job himself. But he is definitely a cool looking kaiju with plenty of abilities. His drill hands are just awesome. He can shoot lightning out of his horn, that suspiciously looks like King Ghidorah's lightning, and also has grenade attacks. Megalon is the Cetopian god, you will bow before him, and oh god, he's having a temper tantrum again. And in 18th place is... Orga, the first new kaiju of the Millennium Era. Orga is yet again another one of those kaijus that is a really interesting idea and a really interesting design that they really should do more with. He's only had one movie appearance, and the fact that he's sort of an alien that's interested in Godzilla, and not because he wants to take over the world, but because he wants to get Godzilla's cells so he can become sort of this invincible, dominant creature in the entire universe. That's a very interesting idea because it means that Orga actually has a level of intelligence about him. He's not just a kaiju that's being taken over by another alien race. He is the alien race that takes over kaijus in a way. He wants to have Godzilla's cells so he can become the ultimate monster. While his only movie appearance does leave a bit to be desired since he doesn't really do much, he appears in the final 10 minutes and kind of gets his ass kicked. The movie is more about Godzilla versus the UFO that Orga is in. His video game appearances are what make him really stand out because he is one of the most powerful kaijus in the entire series, especially the Pipework trilogy, where he is actually the strongest kaiju in the game, able to deliver just devastating attacks and is usually the final boss in most playthroughs of the action mode in Godzilla Saves the Earth. It's also interesting behind the scenes how Toho love to strike down my videos for infringing their copyright infringement, but Orga's original roar was ripped right off the Alien movies. They stole the Xenomorph roar for Aliens for Orga and had to re-edit it and give Orga a new roar in Godzilla 2000 when it came to America. Gee Toho, for a company that strikes down anyone that dares to use Godzilla, you sure do love to steal things from other creators. Wonder if that statement gets this video banned. But anyway, Orga, definitely one of the best kaijus to play as in the games. He just needs a bit more love when it comes to the movies. Number 17. Mechagodzilla 2! The first Mechagodzilla on our list, Mechagodzilla 2, appears in what could arguably be the best Mechagodzilla movie in the entire franchise, Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla 2. And is also the first Mechagodzilla, I would say, to get like a second form, when he joins with the Garuda and becomes Super Mechagodzilla, which in my opinion as Super Mechagodzilla is one of the most badass looking mechas in the entire franchise. And as Mechagodzillas go, I actually think he's probably the most effective Mechagodzilla made. He is the one that came closest to actually completing his job and killing Godzilla. In fact, he did kill Godzilla. The only thing that stopped him was Rodan doing a sort of fusion with Godzilla and, you know, giving Godzilla his Omega beat. Not that thing looks evil. If it was built by aliens like the first Mechagodzilla, then I would agree, but this one was built by the military. It's not supposed to look that aggressive, it's supposed to be marketable in a way. But as an update for Mechagodzilla, he is definitely one of the best. His array of weapons and just all-round effectiveness, especially with his diamond-coated armour, which means that Godzilla's atomic breath is absolutely useless against him, means that he was definitely one of the most effective mechas in the Godzilla franchise. Just a shame that Japan had to destroy its economy to build it. and then it went up in flames. But yes, Mechagodzilla 2. According to you guys, he is the worst Mechagodzilla. Well, I didn't put Mechagodzilla City from the anime trilogy on there because that's not a kaiju, that's a city. That one is the worst. But anyway, on to the next number. Number 16. Mecha King Ghidorah! I mean, since Godzilla got Mechagodzilla, it only makes sense that his arch nemesis would also get a mecha version. Well, technically Mecha King Ghidorah is a cyborg, not an actual robot like all the other Mechagodzillas, since he was made from the carcass of King Ghidorah in Godzilla vs King Ghidorah, but I think you guys already know that. Mecha King Ghidorah, while having a very short screen time, definitely left an impression. It's probably because Godzilla vs King Ghidorah was one of the first Heisei movies to be released internationally. I believe I actually still have the VHS hidden away somewhere. And also the movie being one of the best in the entire franchise. Mecha King Ghidorah has also appeared in a ton of spin-off materials. He's appeared in tons of comics, and has also appeared in tons of video games. I mean, in the Pipeworks trilogy, he was effectively a palette swap of King Ghidorah's player model. Well, apart from Save the Earth, where he actually got different moves. And if they made a Godzilla fighting game nowadays, Mecha King Ghidorah would probably just be a skin for King Ghidorah. But he's definitely an interesting design. It's a very, very brilliant look on King Ghidorah, because it's technically a life support system that's on King Ghidorah. The wings aren't actually for flying, they're solar panels used for powering up the mecha. And also, like Mechagodzilla, it was built to just take on Godzilla, and it did it very, very well. The grapples built into it actually did their job. It took Godzilla out to sea and put him out of action for a little while. I mean, Mecha King Ghidorah got destroyed in the process, but you know, if it does its job, then it did its job. It's just awesome. We have Mechagodzilla, we have Mecha King Ghidorah. It's only a matter of time, I hope, that we get Mecha Mothra. That would be a very interesting kaiju. Maybe one day. But yes, Mecha King Ghidorah, the anti-Godzilla weapon that actually did its job, and number 16 on the list. Number 15. Godzilla Jr. Ah, here we are, the true prince of the monsters. Godzilla Jr., not that Miller piece of crap. Godzilla Jr. is a perfect example of what happens when you take a bad idea and make it good. It was so easy that they could have made Godzilla's son in the Heisei era another cute, kid-friendly character, but they didn't. Even though in Godzilla vs Space Godzilla he did get a very kid-friendly, sort of very cute and adorable look, but he wasn't in the movie very much, so it doesn't really matter. But his use in Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla, and especially in Godzilla vs Destroyer, was really well handled and really well done. He wasn't just a kid-friendly character off to do wacky antics and be adorable. He actually served a point to the plot. When he grew up, you could definitely say he looked like his father. If they brought him into the back in the Heisei era and kept him with that design, then he wouldn't have worked at all. You have to put the hats off to them that they really worked hard in making Godzilla's son actually look like Godzilla's son and not just something for the kids. And he stands up for himself. He actually has a fight in Godzilla vs Destroyer and wins. He gets his own win. It's not some Godzilla says I have to learn to fight my own battles, you know. He's taking up the mantle of the soon-to-be King of the Monsters. It's just a great, great idea that they've done, making a bad idea a good idea. And also, when looking back at his free film appearances, Godzilla Jr. has had a terrible life. When he was born, he was instantly in danger of being crushed by Godzilla, spent a lot of his childhood completely alone on an island, with Godzilla only popping up every now and then, in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and then also got captured by Space Godzilla and entombed in crystals. And then in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, well, what didn't happen to him? He got beaten up by Destroyer, injected with micro-oxygen, which is apparently incredibly painful, and killed. Yeah, he hasn't really had a good life, but, you know, him being the king of the monsters at the end of it, he earned that spot. He earned becoming the king, because he went through enough pain. And that's Godzilla Jr., number 15, the Prince of the Monsters. Number 14. Jet Jaguar! Oh yes, the robot that is either the most loved or one of the most hated kaiju in the entire Godzilla franchise came 14th. That was all you guys, you voted for him. I don't think there has ever been a kaiju in the Godzilla universe that has been more split in the community. Some people absolutely adore him because he's just a symbol of everything that was wrong with the Showa era at the time and how cheesy and goofy he is, and just sort of love that. And others hate him for, well, exactly the same reasons. I for one love him. I absolutely adore just the stupidity of Jet Jaguar and everything around him behind the scenes, how he was a contest winner but he actually wasn't because the design that won the contest looked nothing like Jet Jaguar, and hell, even the name wasn't right. He was supposed to be called Red Alone. He was more like a dragon kaiju, but yeah, they just decided, nah, screw you kid. The terms and conditions of your winning the contest, which was that your monster appears in a Godzilla movie, well, he doesn't have to look like the winning design, does he? He is the poster boy of the late Showa era, for better or for worse. I also love how in the spin-off universe, Jet Jaguar's taken on this role as sort of like this Power Rangers superhero type character, especially in Godzilla Rulers of Earth, where he is an absolute badass. What other kaiju can you say piloted Mechagodzilla 3 and destroyed Destroyer with an absolute zero cannon? That's what Jet Jaguar did. It is very unlikely that Jet Jaguar will ever appear in a movie again. He is going to be appearing in Singular Point, but it's very unlikely that he will actually make a movie appearance unless it's for a joke. And really that's how you should look as Jet Jaguar. He is kind of a joke, but he's a funny joke. And he's also sort of a blank canvas for whatever the person who's writing him wants to do with him. I personally love him, and long may his reign continue. Number 13. Baragon. This was for me the biggest surprise of the list. I didn't expect Baragon to do this well. I expected him to be in the 20s, but not this high, and getting very close to actually being in the top 10. Hell, in the early stages of this survey, when I was looking at the update, he was in the top 10. It was during the last few weeks of the survey is when he slipped down. But then again, how can you not just adore this little puppy kaiju? Look at him, he's just so adorable with his big eyes and his big ears, and oh, he's a little digging puppy. He's just so adorable. Well, he's not necessarily that adorable in his first movie appearance in Frankenstein Conquers the World, but I think it's more his appearance in Godzilla GMK, which is his best appearance. Well, he doesn't really stand up at all to Godzilla and gets his ass kicked. He is just adorable. And he is also the first kaiju in the Godzilla franchise to be portrayed by a female suit actress. And yes, I have to play the clip. that will never not be adorable. And that's just like Baragon. He is a really adorable kaiju, but that doesn't mean he's not also a really tough and really awesome kaiju. His breath attack is apparently very similar to Godzilla's, and is one of the few kaijus to have the status of being an Earth Defender monster. I definitely think he can't be a villain kaiju anymore. He's too adorable to be a bad guy. He's just too cute and just too awesome to not be a good guy in whatever appearance he may have. And that's Baragon, the most adorable kaiju ever made. And number 13, unlucky for some. And in 12th place is... Monster X and Kaiju Ghidorah. How do you up the ante and give Godzilla a suitable final enemy for his 50th anniversary movie? Well, you don't just give him King Ghidorah again. Oh no, no, no. You give him the rank up. You give him the Kaiju Ghidorah. But you also make him fight Monster X first before that. Monster X was technically the last new kaiju from the Godzilla franchise in a very long time. And I do like the design for him. Sort of like an underling, sort of lesser powered version of a Ghidorah, because when you look at his design, all the hints that he is a Ghidorah are there. The two separate heads on his shoulders, the fact that his tail has a split of 2 in it, and that his beams are yellow like Ghidorah's. This really would have been one of the best reveals if it wasn't leaked. He is definitely the quick, agile version of this kaiju, and it also raises the question that if Monster X / Kaiju Ghidorah has this form, then does that mean that King Ghidorah has like a form like this? That would be interesting to look at. And then when he transforms into Kaiju Ghidorah, we have one of the best transformation sequences in the entire Godzilla franchise, and 2, the perfect looking final enemy for Godzilla in his 50th anniversary. He looks like the final boss. Big, bulky, and just insanely powerful. It's clear that Kaiju Ghidorah is a trade-off. What he loses in speed and agility, he gains for in just sheer power. The only kaiju in Godzilla Final Wars to actually give Godzilla any trouble. And if Godzilla's singular point is going to be this whole destroy all monsters thing where every single kaiju is in it, I would definitely like to see Kaiju Ghidorah make an appearance. Maybe have King Ghidorah and Kaiju Ghidorah. Maybe have a King Ghidorah War. Or a Ghidorah War. That's a better name for it. The Ghidorah War. Who knows? But there we have it. Monster X and Kaiju Ghidorah, the ultimate final boss. And 12th. And number 11, and just missing out on the top 10 is... King Kong. Oh buddy, the things aren't looking good for you in Godzilla vs Kong if you can't even get in the top 10 of this list. Yes, King Kong is a kaiju in his own right and technically shouldn't be on this list, but him and Godzilla are so linked together now that it's sort of, he is basically a kaiju in the Godzilla franchise. Despite the fact that they have only fought once, for now, this is one of the most legendary rivalries in all of movies, not just in the Godzilla franchise. Godzilla vs King Kong has always been a thing. It's amazing how it took nearly 60 years for there to be a rematch. But as for King Kong himself, well, he's one of the most basic kaijus that there's ever been. He is basically a giant gorilla. That is King Kong, he is just a giant kaiju-sized gorilla. But I do like how in King Kong vs Godzilla they actually did give him a power so he could actually stand up to Godzilla, in that he can use electricity as a sort of strength. the perfect counter to Godzilla's weakness, which was the first time that Godzilla's weakness to electricity was used in a Godzilla movie. It was a way of evening out the odds for King Kong, and I do like the detail of when King Kong does get struck by lightning and he is attacking Godzilla, that he has lightning coming out of his hands when he touches Godzilla. And this upcoming rematch, whenever the hell that comes out, is definitely going to be one of the most anticipated movie fights of all time, and you better not disappoint. This has really got to be something special for all the delays and just all the behind the scenes nonsense going on around this. The fact that we still have not got a trailer and this movie is supposed to be coming out in 5 months. Oh, sorry, I was having a bit of a rant there. Should be talking about King Kong. Yes, he's just a giant ape kaiju. He's the king of Skull Island. He is King Kong. Well, he's technically Kong at the moment, and I'm sure he'll become King Kong at the end of Godzilla vs Kong. The pretenders to the throne of King of the Monsters, King Kong is 11th on our list and just misses out on the top 10. Number 10. Space Godzilla. You know, when the original idea of Mechagodzilla came about, you'd think they couldn't get more ridiculous than the evil robot doppelganger of Godzilla. But no, Space Godzilla had to come along and one-up them, because it's the evil version of Godzilla, but from space. Space Godzilla is a kaiju that basically is the idea that came from, well, a lack of ideas. What the hell can we do with Godzilla now that we're in this deep of the Heisei era and we need a new monster? I don't know, how about Godzilla, but he's from space? But that being said, while the Soul movie isn't very good, Space Godzilla himself has, well, he's a really interesting kaiju in terms of just what they have done with him. It would have been very easy to just basically make another Godzilla, but he looks a bit more spacey. But no, they've given him his own abilities, identity, and personality. Space Godzilla isn't a brawler like his Earth-like brother. No, he's more of a ranged attacker, he's more of a strategist. Space Godzilla, because of the giant crystals on his shoulders, can barely move his arms, meaning he has to rely on range attacks, energy beams, and strategy. He can't brute force it like Godzilla. And his abilities are where most of his imagination lies. He's got telekinetic powers, he can spawn and summon crystals, he can fire his crystals at people, he has so many energy beams, he can just pick up Godzilla and throw him around with the power of his mind. His vast array of abilities make him one of the most powerful kaijus in the Godzilla universe, but also makes him extremely vulnerable when they don't work or he has no energy to do it anymore. He's also the kaiju with the most obvious weakness. I mean, you don't need to play many boss fights to know what the obvious weak points of Space Godzilla are. It's also his use in other media has been very interesting. He basically became the main villain of the Pipeworks trilogy. While not appearing in the Soil Monsters, he was the main villain of Save the Earth and Unleashed. He definitely has a popularity. While I don't think he can ever truly be the final definitive villain, the most powerful villain of any Godzilla universe, he will definitely always be up there as one of the most dangerous and one of the most threatening. But yes, this is Space Godzilla, Godzilla's evil brother, from space, and number 10. Number 9. Mechagodzilla, the original and some would say the best. Mechagodzilla comes in at number 9, which is actually a surprise to me. I definitely expected this Mechagodzilla to be the highest ranking Mechagodzilla. But no, he just comes in at number 9. The last of Toho's big 5, Mechagodzilla is just one of those ideas that can be implemented and changed for whatever the writer wants it to be. In this case, Mechagodzilla is basically the standard Showa affair of the evil invading aliens, and this is their monster. Well, it's actually a robot this time that they're going to use to take over the world, and it just so happens to look like Godzilla. And for some reason in the first movie they decided to disguise it as Godzilla, and they never give a reason why they did that. Seriously, rewatch Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla. They never explain why Mechagodzilla was dressed up as Godzilla in the first place. And this Mechagodzilla is by far and away the most brutal Mechagodzilla. Not only what he did to Best Boy Anguirus, but also his 2 fights with Godzilla are probably some of the worst injuries Godzilla's ever suffered, especially in Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla. I mean, I don't think we have ever seen Godzilla covered in this much blood before or after this movie. His just simple array of weaponry that just makes him so awesome. One of the best moments in all of Godzilla is when he just unloads all his weapons at once in his all-weapon attack. The music combined with the sheer spectacle of just all these explosions coming out of this suit is just really incredible. Really, in a way, you could say Mechagodzilla saved Godzilla, because the movie before Mechagodzilla was Godzilla vs Megalon, and that is what I would consider the lowest point in the Godzilla franchise. Not in terms of movie quality, because I actually love Godzilla vs Megalon, but more in terms of just where Godzilla was as a franchise at this point. Toho was close to bankruptcy, they made the movie incredibly cheaply, and everyone just hated it. It just seemed like this was going to be the last hurrah for Godzilla, and it's going to be the last death spasm. But then they decided to just cut the bullshit, and for Godzilla's 20th anniversary, make one of their most ambitious movies yet. And they certainly did that. In many ways, Mechagodzilla became one of Toho's big 5 because he saved Godzilla. And that does usually seem to be the habit with Godzilla movies, depending on whatever the era is, well, our era's starting to slump a bit, let's drag out Mechagodzilla. They did it in the Showa universe, they did it in the Heisei universe, they did it in the Millennium universe, and by the looks of things they're going to be doing it in the Monsterverse. Yes, Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla 1 and technically Mechagodzilla 2, even though he's not Mechagodzilla 2, he's Mechagodzilla 1-2. The last of Toho's big 5 and the first of the mechas. And number 9. Number 8. Biolante. This was one of the biggest surprises for me. I really underestimated Biolante's popularity. I definitely expected them to be in the 20s to 11s. I did not expect Biolante to get into the top 10, and at number 8, and came very close to beating one of Toho's biggest names. I definitely think Biolante's popularity has come in recently. If I did this countdown 10 or so years ago, I don't think Biolante would be anywhere near as popular, but that was because of the wide release of Godzilla vs Biolante on DVD, and the movie being reappraised as one of the best in the entire franchise. And as for Biolante, well, she's just one of the most ambitious kaijus that Toho have ever made. In my opinion, the fully formed Biolante outfit that they used for the final fight is the best outfit Toho has ever made. There is just so much work and detail and just impressive feats that they accomplished with this suit. It's a shame it's only on screen for about 5 minutes. Biolante is also one of many firsts for the Godzilla universe. Biolante is the first plant-based kaiju in the Godzilla universe. Biolante is also the first Godzilla kaiju that was created by splicing Godzilla's DNA, which is something that they will do a lot of from here on out. Which is something that ends up happening quite a lot. And also Biolante is one of the more tragic characters, created basically by the desperation of a scientist trying to save his daughter. And Biollante, you could say, is one of the most neutral kaijus ever, because it's never really been established what side Biollante's on. Godzilla is a force of nature and not on anyone's side, but Biollante is not good nor evil. Like Godzilla, she's very much in the middle. She's also one of the biggest kaijus of all time, not including all the different versions of Godzilla, and is definitely a kaiju I want to see come back in some form, hopefully in Singular Point. She definitely looks like she would fit right in with the designs of Singular Point. But yes, this is Biollante, what you get when you cross a plant, Godzilla's cells, and your dead daughter. Number 7. Rodan! Another one of Toho's big 5. Rodan comes in at number 7, which is interesting because considering how popular Rodan seems to be, being that like all the other big 5 he has appeared in every single era of Toho movies, Rodan is definitely a good kaiju. He's a very basic kaiju, he's really just a giant pterodon. I don't think personally he's had that many great moments himself. He's been in many great movies, but as a kaiju as himself, he hasn't had those great standout moments. I think the best moment Rodan has ever had is when he dropped Godzilla from the sky. Every other appearance, he's sort of just been a backmarker. He's there and it's happy to see him there, but he doesn't really do much. I mean, in Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla 2, he just spends the entire movie massively outclassed and getting his ass kicked. But Rodan, like Anguirus, we'll get to him. Main popularity I think lies in the fact that he is one of Godzilla's most loyal allies, even though he has been a villain more than he has been a bad guy when fighting Godzilla. But anyway, when you think of Rodan, you think of him as a good monster, a good Earth Defender monster who is on the side of humans. It's why people were a bit upset that in Godzilla King of the Monsters he was a villain. People expected him to be on Godzilla's side and he wasn't. And also, like in most of Rodan's appearances, he was sort of a backmarker and afterthought. But his design, unlike most kaijus, has remained fairly consistent. He is basically a giant pteranodon, and he may or may not get a beam depending on which era you're in. I definitely like Rodan, I especially like Fire Rodan as well. He's one of the few kaijus to get a power up. He's not one of my top 10 favourites, but I can understand why so many people like him, and that's why he's number 7 on this list. Number 6. Mechagodzilla 3! And here we have the final mecha of the list, and the most popular Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla 3 is such a very, very well designed Mechagodzilla. He is just brilliant. He looks like Mechagodzilla from the Showa and the Heisei era, but has also his own unique design. He is also the Mechagodzilla I think is the most realistic. When you look at robots, and especially how we are getting with robots now, I could definitely see Mechagodzilla being built this way. And also the idea of him being made out of the skeleton of the first Godzilla is just inspired. Whoever came up with that idea is just genius. Let's give Mechagodzilla a more personal connection when fighting Godzilla. Really, my one criticism of Mechagodzilla 3 would be that in the 2 movies he is featured in, he has been a bit too overpowered. But I also think that's due to the fact that the Kiryu Saga Godzilla is probably one of the weakest. Mechagodzilla 3 also strikes the perfect balance between weaponry and hand-to-hand combat. I really do like the fact that he sort of starts as a super Mechagodzilla with all the weaponry and the backpack, but then he gets rid of it to become faster and more agile. I also like in the first movie they give him one of the most destructive weapons in all the Godzilla universe, but it was so unreliable. In the next movie they get rid of it for something that is less powerful but more reliable, and is also much more effective. I also really liked the idea of Mechagodzilla remembering that he's Godzilla because of Godzilla's DNA and memories getting into the robot, causing him to go berserk. Unfortunately, they don't really do much with it in the movies. That's a great idea that definitely could be explored with another Mechagodzilla later down the line. Sort of like, well, we built Mechagodzilla to kill Godzilla, but oh god, he's gone out of control. What do? Well, we have to use Godzilla and hope that he can destroy the thing that was built to destroy him. Mechagodzilla 3 is definitely the coolest Mechagodzilla as well. He just looks so sleek, so just cool. He has that coolness factor about him. So yes, that is Mechagodzilla 3. I would probably say he's my favourite Mechagodzilla, and he is also your guys' favourite Mechagodzilla, as he is the highest ranked mecha on this list, but only number 6, meaning he just missed out in the top 5. Number 5. Mothra. Another big surprise. Mothra is definitely one I expected being in the top 3. Being in the top 5 is definitely a high ranking, but with how popular Toho seems to think Mothra is, and she is, being that she has been in so many Kaiju movies and so many Godzilla movies, you would think she would be number 2 or even number 1, but she is in number 5. Which also means out of Toho's big 5, only 2 of them are actually in the top 5 according to my fans. Very interesting that. Much like Mothra. I do really like the idea with Mothra how she's evolved with the times. At first she was worshipped as a god and was seen as a godly protector kaiju, and she was, but that has evolved over the years to become more that she is actually a goddess. She has a great connection with the planet and is the defender and goddess of all life on Earth. She is no doubt the queen of the monsters. She is a very unique kaiju in the way that she is not a kaiju of evil. She is not meant to be dangerous and deadly and destructive. She is meant to be the embodiment of good. She is a protector. She only fights when she has to. She isn't like Godzilla where she will attack because there is something in his territory or he needs to consume or he's just evil. Mothra is, by all intents and purposes, a god. It could also be argued that Mothra is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful kaiju in the Godzilla universe, because when it comes to her fighting Godzilla when he is seen as king of the monsters, she has probably the best fight record when it comes to fighting Godzilla. She has beaten him on numerous occasions. That is Mothra. She is the most pure and good monster that there is in the Godzilla universe, and that's why probably so many people love her. Even if she is a bit overused, it is nice to see her. But then again, I think it's time she got her own movies again, instead of being forced into Godzilla movies over and over again. If she is so popular as Toho like to say she is, then surely she should be popular enough to stand up on her own. Who knows, maybe Toho will finally get out of their rut of putting King Ghidorah, Mothra and Mechagodzilla in all the movies all the time. It's a foolish dream, but I can have it. Number 4. Gigan! The edgiest kaiju ever, well literally, I mean look how many sharp points he has. Gigan is definitely a fan favourite for obvious reasons, because he's just such a cool and unique looking kaiju. He's got swords for hands. How can you not love that? Well, Gigan's original Showa design is, well, it's a product of its time. It's a little bit goofy, but still, it's got a bit of style, and he definitely looks like a threat, while at the same time also a little bit goofy. I mean, also considering in his first movie appearance, he sort of laughs and chuckles and has a bit of sadistic side to him. And he also has the honour of being the first kaiju to make Godzilla bleed. But I definitely think Gigan's main popularity has come from his appearance in Godzilla Final Wars, where they updated his design and just turned him into one of the coolest, if not the coolest kaiju ever. The black and red, or is it dark blue and red, design with just so many spikes and so many weapons just makes Gigan look such a badass. Which is interesting considering what little screen time he has and how he, well, fucks up on all his occasions. But this design has become so popular, it has sort of become the new default design for Gigan. And then just to make things even more awesome, they gave him chainsaw hands. If you want to just make the most insane kaiju ever, just take Gigan and just do stuff with him. There's been fan designs with him having guns. There's also his appearance in the anime trilogy books, which is probably one of the best kaiju stories ever. They made Gigan a good guy and then started him off as a normal kaiju that slowly got more and more parts of him replaced from being injured by Godzilla to the fact that he turned into a cyborg and then just a flat out robot. And it's probably one of the most tragic stories ever told in any kaiju media. And then you also have his appearances in the games, and then you also have his appearances in the comics, where he starts off as the Showa design, and then when it comes to Rulers of Earth he gets upgraded and becomes the Millennium design. And just look at how awesome he is. He's definitely a product of the more kid-friendly side of Showa when he was created, but they have adapted that and made Gigan just an absolute badass. There is no wonder why he's become so popular. And he only has 3 movie appearances, which is odd considering how popular other kaiju are, and they have way more movie appearances than he does, but he only has 3. Let's hope he has more soon. But that's Gigan, number 4 and our edgelord. Number 3. Anguirus. Oh yes, my favourite kaiju outside of Godzilla has taken the bronze medal, which is funny actually because when I did the Ultimate Fan Movie Countdown, my favourite Godzilla movie, Godzilla GMK, also got 3rd place. Starting to be a pattern there. But yes, this is Anguirus, Godzilla's best friend. He's just the best boy. How can you not love Anguirus? He isn't the strongest or has the most powers or has even a beam attack, and has actually not won a fight by himself, but he's probably one of the most determined and lovable kaijus there has ever been, because you just can't help but root for him. He has been a villain twice, in Godzilla Raids Again and Final Wars, but in both times you don't feel like he's the bad guy. His place belongs at Godzilla's side. He has the distinction of being the first kaiju Godzilla ever fought, and also is widely considered his closest friend and ally. He was also one of many Godzilla kaijus who were supposed to have many movie appearances, but never did. He was supposed to be in Godzilla vs. Destroyer, or what originally was going to be Godzilla vs. Destroyer. He was also supposed to be in my favourite Godzilla movie, GMK, but was replaced by King Ghidorah, and was also supposed to be in the Kiryu saga, where he would fight Mechagodzilla, in a repeat of the first time Mechagodzilla appeared in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, where Mechagodzilla 3's first fight would be against Anguirus, which he would probably have lost as usual. But yeah, Anguirus has got this reputation of being an underdog and also Godzilla's best friend, and it just makes you love him and root for him more. Maybe one day he will finally get that victory on screen by himself. We can only hope. I really hope he does, because he's my favourite kaiju. He was one of the first kaijus I ever saw as a kid, and I just can't help but love him. you definitely get the feeling that this is Godzilla's best friend. If Godzilla ever needs an ally, Anguirus will be there, by Godzilla's side until the end. And that's the way it should always be. And that's Anguirus, number 3 on our list, taking the bronze medal. Kinda fitting in a way. Number 2. Destroyer! Taking the silver medal is probably one of the most evil and definitely one of the most strongest kaijus ever made in the Godzilla universe. Destroyer! What a perfect kaiju to finish off the Heisei era. Because they could have done the easy route and just had Godzilla fight another monster from the past, but they didn't go that way. Instead they decided to create something new and just something so awesome. If Godzilla's too powerful, then what do you make that could possibly take down the king of the monsters? Well, how about making something out of the one thing that killed Godzilla? The Oxygen Destroyer. Destroyer just looks satanic. Pure evil. And he is pure evil. In his one movie appearance, he's just sadistic, seeming to take joy in causing harm for Godzilla Jr. and Godzilla, and also all the humans that get in the way. He actively seeks out people and wants to hurt them and kill them. I mean, consider what they did to fish in an aquarium. They could do that to any life form they choose, which could be argued that Destroyer is one of the smartest kaijus that there is, since seeming that he seems to take joy from what he's doing. He is pure evil. It's also said that the perfect form that we see in Godzilla vs. Destroyer at the end may not actually be the final evolution that Destroyer can do. It is hinted that if he could evolve even more, which, bloody hell, what could be even more powerful and evil than this? I definitely hope he shows up in Singular Point. There were rumours going around that he would appear in the Monster Universe, but I don't think he's popular enough outside of the Godzilla fandom to warrant being brought into a movie. But hopefully when Toho start making Godzilla movies again, he makes an appearance, because just look how awesome he is. He is just a perfect final villain. Please bring him into Singular Point. I want to see what a Singular Point design of Good Destroyer could be. Maybe give him his chest beam that he was supposed to have in his movie and they even shot a scene for but never used. But I mean, Destroyer is powerful enough as it is. He's able to carry Godzilla around just by his tail. He has a laser horn. I mean, yes, Destroyer lost, but this was also when Godzilla was in his burning form, when he was at the peak of his power. Which means that it could be said that if Godzilla wasn't in his burning form, that he wouldn't have stood a chance against Destroyer. Hell, it's argued that Destroyer is more powerful than King Ghidorah and Mothra, and is clearly way more powerful than Space Godzilla. He takes the silver medal in this place, but my god, I hope he appears in movies later on just to solidify his sheer evil in his presence as being the most evil and most powerful kaiju that Godzilla has ever fought. But that means Destroyer is second place, and I think we all know who was taking the first place. I mean, it wasn't really going to be any doubt who was going to take first place, was it? Number 1. King Ghidorah! Well, Godzilla is the king of the monsters. Well, there's more than one king. King Ghidorah is Godzilla's arch nemesis, his most recurring villain kaiju, and for good reason, because he is just such a different kaiju to Godzilla. Instead of making Godzilla's arch nemesis another version of Godzilla, they made King Ghidorah completely different. King Ghidorah is so powerful the lack of arms don't hold him back. His gravity beams and wings can just do the job. Godzilla has always needed help, whether it being from other kaijus or human intervention, to take down King Ghidorah. These two have a rivalry that is one of the oldest and longest in all of cinema. Batman has Joker, but it could be argued that King Ghidorah and Godzilla have been fighting each other for longer than that. As the Doctor once said, you can always judge a man by the quality of his enemies. And well, Godzilla isn't a man, but you can definitely judge him on the quality of his enemies, and King Ghidorah stands high and mighty above all others as Godzilla's arch nemesis, the king of Godzilla's enemies. No matter where Godzilla goes, King Ghidorah will always be close behind him, and they will always face off. No matter what's going on, if King Ghidorah is a good guy that one time, or a bad guy, or if Godzilla's a good guy, bad guy, or anti-hero, these two will always face off against each other. Godzilla is the king of the monsters, and King Ghidorah is the king of all evil. It's very interesting how different interpretations of King Ghidorah have lasted through the years. I definitely think the Showa version is my favourite interpretation, but not my favourite design. I like how King Ghidorah is just a planet destroyer. He goes from planet to planet just destroying all life, just for the fun of it, it seems to be. There's no real reason given apart from the fact that he just wants to do it. He wants to assert his dominance on the universe. True evil personified. And if true evil is a golden dragon with 3 heads, then so be it. That's a pretty good look for true evil. And that is King Ghidorah, number 1 on the list, and the winner of this survey. I mean, it wasn't really going to be much of a surprise. I mean, Christ, he took the most votes in first, second and third.